So my name is Lou Coticchio, and I am a spider biologist here at the University of South Florida in St. Petersburg. I am running the Florida Brown Recluse project, which is basically my research project here at the university where I study recluse spider behavior and also mythology, urban legends, a lot of the stuff that comes along with recluse spiders. One of the main things being, are recluse spiders in Florida? A lot of people seem to think that recluse spiders are native to Florida, and they're not. And for decades, even as a kid, I was told that, the brown recluse is all over the place biting people. And so I'm here to study that and figure out, are they here and are they biting people? I've been working with spiders basically my whole life as a hobbyist. Academically, for about 5 years. I started to study recluse spiders when I was getting my associate's degree in Santa Monica, California. I would go out to Eastern California and look for desert recluse and stuff like that and study isolated populations out there. And I started studying recluse spiders in Florida in 2018.
Why spiders?
I love them. They're just extremely interesting. I've had a fascination with them since I was a child. When I was a kid, I grew up in Florida, so I would go out and collect every creepy crawly thing that you could think of and, bringing it home and keep it in a jar or in a tank. And spiders and snakes were the two most fascinating to me. I just found them to be extremely fascinating. And, there's a story I told you earlier about my father. He was bit on the hand by something when he was doing yard work. And he was told it was a brown recluse bite. And I went searching through that bush for hours and hours looking for that spider that bit my father, and never found it because it wasn't a brown recluse. But literally since as old as I can remember, I've had a fascination with them and have been keeping them as pets, taking them home with me. Educationally speaking, I did undergrad research here at USF. Like I said, I started in 2018. It actually started with widow spiders. I noticed brown widows and black widows where they would cohabitate. The brown widows were pushing out black widows. Basically, once brown widows showed up, black widows were no longer there. And I did notice this also happening out in California. And a spider biologist named Richard Vedder, whose research I've been basically taking over since he retired. He's kind of a mentor and my predecessor in a lot of ways. He was studying black widows and brown widows and how they were pushing out, brown widows were pushing out black widows in California. So I started to study that here, and I was an admin and a moderator on a lot of identification pages. And every time somebody would post a picture of a spider and it was brown, it's a brown recluse, kill it, kill it with fire, that whole thing. And I would have to explain to them, over and over again, brown recluse don't live here. They're not native to Florida. There's no evidence that they're here. And it was just story after story of, oh, my uncle was bit, and, I have a cousin who almost lost an arm because of it. And, the scientific evidence at the time had shown that there really wasn't a lot of recluse spiders in Florida. There had only been about a little over 100 actual recluse spiders found and documented in the state from 1904. So the evidence was pointing towards, there's no evidence of populations here, and all these people are claiming to be bit, so what's doing that? And so I kind of switched focus from widows to recluse spiders. I guess you could say I kind of got tired of arguing with people about whether or not they were here, and I'm like, I'm gonna go out there and find out, are they here? And put an end to the myth once and for all. Over the last, I would say 3.5, 4 years, I have found some recluse spiders, but no brown recluse. So I've searched 132 properties total now. And 22 of those properties actually did have recluse spiders, but they were all the Mediterranean. None of them were the brown recluse. 14 of those properties were in St. Augustine. So St. Augustine does have a lot of isolated Mediterranean recluse populations. But the thing about recluse spiders is, they're not really outdoor spiders. They definitely, especially the Mediterranean, prefer to live, in people's homes. It's called synanthropic. So all the populations I'm finding, they're, in people's crawl spaces or in their garage. And so right now I'm trying to determine, okay, why does St. Augustine have so many? And I've only found 14, and I know there are a lot more out there that I'm still going to be going and searching. So it's a good possibility that they may be all over St. Augustine. So why that is, I don't know. The other properties where I found them, they all had legitimate explanations. I found a property in Newport Richey, but they were in the luggage of the people who had done a European tour. So they brought them back with them from Europe. Wesley Chapel, I found a population, but the husband was in the Army, and the population was mainly in the garage and all in the Army equipment that he had brought home. So clearly, when he was out on tour in Europe, he had brought them back with him from Europe. And another house where I found them in Orlando was an Airbnb. So people coming and visiting from Europe were bringing them. So most of the populations I found, there's an explanation, and it's usually people are bringing them here from Europe. St. Augustine's the only mystery. I don't know how long they've been there and how many populations there are. I'm still working on that as we speak. As far as recluse spiders, there have been Chilean recluse and there have been brown found in the past. But there was, I think, 2 or 3 populations of Chilean, and they were very small, like 6 to 10 spiders, and they were killed. They came in some luggage. And there's also a few populations of brown recluse that were found here. But I have not found any brown recluse, only Mediterranean. And like I said, 132 properties. The other 109 were people mistaking local spiders for recluse spiders. So a lot of times it's, people are just really bad at identifying spiders. And I actually, on my Florida Brown Recluse project page, had a quiz that I put up there where I tested people's knowledge of identifying recluse spiders, and only the arachnologists got it right. Everybody else was way off. So it was really good at showing people that, everybody's so certain they know what brown recluse looks like and that they have them in their yard. But when it comes down to it, people are terrible at identifying spiders. And that's the biggest issue, is what I'm finding right now is, I am finding some Mediterranean. They are coming here hitchhiking, but I don't see brown recluse being out there. And if they are, they're hitchhiking here with people who are moving from where they live naturally and bringing them with them. But the vast majority of properties that I've searched, it's been people just not knowing what they actually look like. The more common spider is the southern house spider. The males of the southern house spider look, if you're not skilled, they look like a brown recluse from a distance. They have that typical mark on the back, that violin mark that everybody likes to associate with recluse spiders. They have a very similar marking on the back. They have that similar coloration. And the males, once they mature, will go out roaming looking for females, where the females will stay in their area and they won't leave. So if you have southern house spiders on your property, you're not going to see the females. You're going to see the males out looking for a girlfriend. So it's very often people encountering the males out seeking females, and they go, oh my God, that's a brown recluse. And then they start to notice them all over the place and they think they have an infestation. So more times than not, it's been the southern house spider. No. Overall, my answer would be no. So of the 22 populations I found here in Florida, only one person's been bit. And she was bit because she left her clothes on the floor overnight. And anyone who lives in areas where recluse spiders are native and has grown up with recluse spiders, there are certain things you just don't do. And one is, you shake your shoes out before you put them on. You don't leave your clothes on the floor overnight. But people who live in Florida or live in areas where they're not native, they don't know these things. So only one person was bit, and she left her clothing on the floor overnight. I guess she got up in the morning, put on her pants. They were leggings. They were tight. She felt something crawling and smushed it. And the smushing of the spider is what caused it to bite. Now, this was the same person whose husband was in the military. And he had been back, I think, for like 3 or 4 years. So they had been cohabitating with these spiders for several years before she even experienced the bite. And of all the 22 populations that I found, most of them have been living with those people for 5, 10, 15 years. And I know this because some of the populations that I found were revisiting homes where they had found one and then sent it to the Florida Department of Agriculture. And, like 2007. And they were like, yeah, that's a Mediterranean recluse. So I would call those people and say, hey, can I come and see if you have a population? Or if that was a one-off, it hitchhiked in a shipping container or something. And then I would go there, and sure enough, they'd have hundreds of them living in the crawl space in their garage. And it's funny because they freak out as soon as they find out. But it's like, hey, you've been living with these for a very long time and haven't been bit. So now that you know they're here, nothing should really change, other than you should just be more careful about, where you leave your clothes. Don't put your shoes on, shake them out, things like that. But should you be scared? No. I would say the evidence strongly shows that they're not aggressive spiders, or defensive, I should say. They're passive.
Should you handle them?
Should you handle them? No. Do I handle them? Yes, it's part of my job. I'm crawling under houses collecting spiders, so they're going to get on me. I'm going through garages emptying boxes, and they're going to get on me. So getting recluse spiders on me is a part of my job. Would I recommend people handle them? Not really. But I don't think people should fear them either. It's kind of the same with any medically significant animal. I had pet rattlesnakes growing up, and I never free handled them. I always used a snake hook and stuff like that, and I respected them. But I had a lot of experience, and I built up to that. I started off with regular non-venomous snakes and became extremely adept at handling non-venomous snakes, then worked my way up. So I guess it would be the same thing with spiders. If you see a recluse spider, I wouldn't say just go pick it up. I don't suggest anyone just start going outside and grabbing spiders, simply for the fact that you're actually more likely to kill the spider than you are to hurt yourself. People don't realize how fragile they are. I had a pet tarantula, a Goliath bird eater, and I was holding it and sneezed and turned my head, but not enough. And the wind coming out of my mouth scared the spider, and it walked off my hand and only fell from a sitting position, and it died. So, it was a very long time ago. I was very young, and it was very devastating for me. I had that tarantula for like 7 years. There are only 2 medically significant spiders, meaning if you get bit, you should seek medical attention. And that is the recluse species and the widow species. In Florida, recluse spiders aren't native, and we do have widows. We have the brown widow and the black widow. The brown widow there's some debate about whether they should be even considered medically significant. a lot of research has shown and observational data that being bit by a brown widow, not a brown recluse, is usually just like pain and swelling and stuff, where a black widow is a little bit more severe. And again, you know, I don't see anybody just going out and grabbing a black widow, picking it up. But you also shouldn't be terrified of it. The stigma behind spiders is really unwarranted. People have this huge fear of them as if these spiders are out to get you, when in all actuality, they really don't want to have anything to do with you. And from years of having spiders as pets and handling them, I can tell you this, they didn't really want to bite you either. Venom's costly. And if they bite you and they don't replenish that venom by ingesting food, then they've just wasted venom. And so, you know, they're not going to want to bite you. That's the last thing they want to do. Spiders lay eggs and they wrap it in silk. So it's called an egg sac. With recluse spiders, their egg sacs kind of, I call them pimples. They kind of look like a little white zit. And it's like a little cottony zit. And it's actually really easy to miss their egg sacs because they're flat with a little bit of a hump to it. And so you're more likely, if you were to have a population of recluse spiders in your home, you're more likely to see their shed skins that they leave all over the place. That's actually one of the things I look for. Like when I walk into a home and I'm investigating it to see if they have recluse spiders, if I see a shed skin sticking on the wall, I'll know, okay, that's a recluse spider. And yeah, you probably have them here. Most people contact me through the Florida Brown Recluse Project page or through identification pages on social media, Facebook being really the main contributor. You know, somebody posts a picture of what looks like a recluse spider, the admins or moderators on the identification pages will go, yeah, that looks like a recluse spider, and then they'll forward them to me. Or they'll just contact me directly. If I see the picture and it looks like a recluse spider, or I know it is, then I will usually set up a time to go out and investigate. When I go there, I'll take a look at the layout of the house. Recluse spiders get their name because they're reclusive. That is another reason why a lot of these houses live with these spiders for a long time and don't even know they're there. The two main areas I've been finding them are in the crawl space under the house or in the garage. If they have a very cluttered garage, then they'll be hidden behind stuff. So when I go to a new property, if they have a crawl space, that's where I start. I go under the house, headlamp on, and just start looking. And if I start seeing recluse spiders, I start to collect them. I will usually collect as many as I can because most of the time people don't want to have them there, although eradicating a population that's well established is close to impossible, simply because of they can put their egg sacs in deep inside of a crack or a crevice that pesticides just aren't going to get to. Then I'll usually look in the garage. The garage is a lot of work. It entails going through every box that they have, every item that they have, and looking in and around it. If it's a box full of items, I have to take everything out of the box and go through the whole box. It's a lot of work. Once I've cleared a box and I know there's nothing in it, I'll then put it out in the driveway and continue to do that until I've gone through everything in their garage, and then I'll put everything back. I do this for a couple reasons. One, to establish, how large is this population? Two, to remove as many spiders as I can, because again, most people don't want them there. So although eradicating them is probably not going to happen, if I can do them the favor of taking as many with me as possible, I will do that. I'll usually take the egg sacs too, or destroy them. Especially in the crawl space, you're hard pressed to find a pest control agent that's going to go into a crawl space and start spraying down there. So, and fumigating is probably not going to work either. So usually I will just educate them, things not to do, things to do. Don't leave your clothes on the floor. If you do, shake them out. Check inside and out before you put it back on your body or in the laundry basket. Again, look in your shoes before you put them on. If you find them coming into the house, it's usually males most of the time that are found in the house, and they're usually out looking for a girlfriend. While I'm not an advocate of glue traps, if they use them under the beds in their home, then that's okay. I'm not a big fan of glue traps like in the garage or outdoors because you can get collateral damage. You can catch a local species of snake or anything, a lizard or something. But, obviously you're not going to catch that under the bed of somebody in their house. So that's another defensive measure where they can put glue traps along the wall or wrap them around the legs of the bed. And this will help prevent them from getting up into the bed. Spiders shouldn't be feared, but they should be respected, especially the medically significant kind. Do recluse spiders have venom? That's potentially dangerous. Of course. The United States species, the North American species, their venom tends to be more of a localized damage. So if you do get bit by one, you're more likely to see, localized tissue damage. And the thing that people realize is not every recluse bite leads to this necrotic wound. So two of the big urban legends that are out there is one, if you get bit by a recluse spider that, you're going to lose your arm or something. And that's simply way over exaggerated. Their venom actually, if it does cause a necrotic wound, while the wound can be about 3 to 4 inches in diameter at the biggest, it doesn't go deep. They rarely go deeper than about a half a centimeter. It mostly just causes tissue damage to the epidermis and the dermis, but not the tissue below it. It's actually one of the things in the long list of things that you would look for to exclude or include a recluse spider as the culprit. And that's deep wounds. They don't cause deep wounds. They also don't cause oozing or pus. Their wounds are actually dry. You may get what's called a bleb. It's like a blister inside of the wound. Basically what happens when you get bit, if you're going to have the necrotic wound, is the skin will start to turn discolored. It'll turn like a bluish color or a purplish color. That's a sign that necrosis is coming. But that doesn't always happen. There have been people who have been bit by recluse spiders who simply just get, redness and pain. And so if you're going to get the necrosis, if it is pending, you'll get like this blue discolored area. And that blue area, it almost kind of sinks is what happens. It just kind of depresses in. And that can happen anywhere from, a small little nickel-sized out to about 3 inches or in diameters. The largest I've seen were about 3 or 4 inches, but they were not deep. They were shallow and wide. And again, that doesn't happen with every recluse bite. And that's with the North American species. Now with the South American species, their venom is known for having more of a systemic reaction, meaning it happens somewhere out throughout the body, it travels. So the South American species, if you're going to have bad reactions, they're more likely to cause kidney damage. And this is usually because it breaks down your red blood cells. and it'll break down some muscle tissue or something, and that gets into the blood, and it kind of clogs up the kidneys, I guess is the best way to describe that. And so it causes kidney damage. And the venom itself, I guess, can cause kidney damage. But that's not really seen in the North American species. So I think it's also kind of ironic that the brown recluse, the most infamous of them all, is actually, when comparing venoms, not the most dangerous. I don't really like to use that word, but I guess, the one most likely to cause damage you should be worried about. And again, if you do get the localized damage, it's not going to cause amputations. There's only been one reported amputation from a recluse bite in the United States, and it wasn't from the recluse bite. It was from a fungal infection that happened in the wound from the bite. So had they not been a fungal infection, they wouldn't have needed to amputate that limb. And so the whole mythology of, oh, my uncle got bit and they almost had to, remove his arm, well, then that was an infection or something else. That wasn't a recluse bite. As a matter of fact, a lot of research has shown that most misdiagnosed bites are infections. There's actually, if you go online, there's a mnemonic that you can look up. It's called Not Recluse. And basically, N-O-T, each one of those is, it stands for something. N is for numerous. And there are several key factors of recluse bites that happen and things that don't happen that help to eliminate that. And so a few doctors that I've talked to, that I work with on my research page, and a couple that I've talked to on the side, they've told me that spider bites are not something they're taught in medical school. And very often, somebody comes in and, they say it was a spider, and the doctor's, okay, yeah, sure. Because, they're just going to treat your symptoms. In reality, they don't have anti-venom for recluse spiders. So it's just like, well, let's treat the wound and that's it. So they'll put spider bite down as the cause, but nobody really knows. And a lot of key factors, one of the things I want to do at the end of all my research is kind of go around and do some presentations for the medical community about, where there are recluse spiders, where there are not, and some of the things to look out for that don't happen in recluse bites. Like, they don't ooze pus. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a house where somebody's like, I have recluse spiders, you should come to my house. I was bit by one. And then I go there and I don't find any recluse spiders. And I'm like, all right, well, I didn't find any recluse spiders, but do you have any photos of the bite? Yeah, sure. And then I take a look at it, and the first thing I see is this oozing, pus-filled wound. And I'm like, oh, that's got a lot of pus. That's an infection. Recluse spiders don't ooze pus. And secondary infections from spider bites are very, very rare. So a lot of times, recluse bites are simply misdiagnosed MRSA or some kind of a secondary infection. And then, so when you take a look at the fact that all the populations I found, only one person's been bit. Then you look at the bite experiment that I completed. We poked and prodded. We poked the recluse spiders in the face. We grabbed them by the legs. We squeezed them on the sides using what's called a no-kill tweezer. So basically it squeezes the spider just enough to cause a reaction, but not enough to crush it to death. And we used FDA-approved gel that mimics human skin. And so I took 40 Mediterranean recluse. I used the Mediterranean because they're the only ones I'm finding in Florida. So if you do have recluse spiders in Florida, you're more likely going to have the Mediterranean than any other species because they're the only ones I've found. And so if there are recluse spiders out there biting everybody all over Florida, that's going to be the species that's most likely going to be doing it. And, the bite percentages were very low. Grabbing them by the legs, I think it was 2.5%. So, we were grabbing the spiders and, tugging and pulling and trying really hard to get these spiders to react. And they were literally just laying there like, okay. But when we compared them to other spiders, like wolf spiders, so I tried using wolf spiders for a few reasons. One, they could be a little bit more defensive. I don't like using the word aggressive. Spiders are not aggressive. Aggressive would mean they're purposely attacking you, which spiders don't do. Spiders don't purposely attack you. They're defensive. So if you grab a spider or touch a spider, put pressure on it, they're going to bite you as a defensive reaction. So wolf spiders are known to be a little bit more defensive. And so I use them. Now, when I grab the wolf spider by the leg, 90% of the time, they would swing back and bite. So I'm grabbing the recluse spiders by the legs, and they're just laying there like a dead fish. And I'm grabbing the wolf spiders by the legs, and they're spinning back and biting almost every single time. The highest bite percentage we got from the experiment was 36%, which is not significantly, but less than half of the time. And in order to do that, we had to put the spiders on their back, and then using the FDA gel, put pressure on the top and bottom of the body. So basically that would simulate rolling over on one or getting one caught between your arm or something, which I actually know somebody who did that. They had one in their shirt and they put their arm down on it and it bit them. And we were only able to get them to bite 36% of the time. So when you look at the 22 populations I found, only one person's been bit. They've been cohabitating, some of these people, 5, 10, 15, almost 20 years for one population. Then you look at the bite experiment, and for the vast majority of the things that we tried to do to them, they're not biting. We had to literally flip them on their back where they're most vulnerable just to get them to bite 36% of the time. So when you put that all together, these spiders are not showing the type of behavior that is indicative of all these bites that are happening all over the state. And then on top of that, I'm going around and I'm searching for properties, and all the properties where people claim to have been bit, there's no recluse spiders. Yet the properties where nobody's being bit, there's recluse spiders. So there's a huge contradiction there. And when you put those together, it shows that, yeah, recluse spiders, do they have potentially dangerous venom? Sure. Do they have venom that could potentially cause, localized damage and necrosis? Absolutely. Are they something you should be scared of? No. You have all these people who've been cohabitating with them for years and years and years, and nobody's getting bit. So when you put it all together, they're a spider that should be respected for the potential of what they could do, but they should not be feared because they're not the monster that's hiding under the bed waiting to come get you, like everybody thinks they are. I like to call them the boogeyman of spiders, because I don't think any spider brings fear and makes people shake quite like the word brown recluse does.